Um, if you have attended our Federal Work Study Overview webinars previously, this is essentially a succession webinar that kind of goes into the nitty-gritty of how to look for an on-campus job. So I'm going to walk you through the portal. I'm going to walk you through how to navigate the different meanings, the different tiers, as well as where to look for jobs, how to bookmark them, and so forth. But with that being said, it's really exciting because each year we have about 4,500 to 4,800 students at GW in nearly 6,800 positions. So it's about 25 to 30% of GW's workforce, which, as I've mentioned prior, you guys are the pillar in supporting GW's workforce. So definitely a pat on the back for those that are, wanting to dive into the student employment experience. But what our team specifically does is we manage all of recruiting, hiring, and onboarding functions specifically for student employees. So this does look differently from the onboarding that you have with the department specifically. We also run the off-campus program, the Federal Work Study programs. We develop programs especially for student employees, so webinars and workshops like these, as well as another webinar that's coming up in August, which is Point A to Point Z, how to be onboarded as a student employee, which essentially walks you through the entire checklist process on the documents you need, what to sign off for, and how to sign your offer letter and so forth. So if you're more interested in that, definitely explore the website to sign up for that webinar that's coming up. And we also celebrate National Student Employment Week, which is the full second week of April every single year. It's our most anticipated time of the year because we get to celebrate all the amazing contributions that student employees have made to GW, as well as the ongoing community. So there are definitely positives to becoming a student employee, especially when it comes to being showcased that we are very thankful for you to be on board. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and look over the learning outcomes for today. So, we're going to go ahead and learn how to search for an on-campus job using the Student Employment Talent Management Portal. You'll also be able to identify components of a resume and structure of a cover letter. So, the latter half of this webinar, I will be going over cover letters and resumes a little bit more in depth. But definitely be aware that the Center for Career Services is a fantastic resource, specifically our career coaches, who are able to review those resumes and cover letters as you navigate applying for prospective jobs. And then also I'll make you aware of the virtual and in-person interviewing tips and resources that we've provided, but also once again, definitely a shout out plug to our career coaches. They are a fantastic resource if you want that more one-on-one personalized experience going over your application material, such as your resume, cover letter, interview strategies, and so forth. So let's go ahead and start with how to search for a job, right? So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and input this link into a tab. So it's go.gwu.edu/apply to student positions. And so this link will take you to this specific page. And something that I do want to make a note of is that you are not given an account automatically. So if this is your first time applying ever for a position on campus, or you have not created an applicant profile yet, then you want to go ahead and start there. So on the left-hand side on the column, you'll see the third option is to create an account. So you want to go ahead and create your own account using specifically your at gwu.edu address. So this is not going to be, as mentioned prior, it's not going to be your at law. It's not going to be your at email.gw.edu address, and it's definitely not going to be your gwid at gw.edu. It's going to be your email address, the one that you use that has letters or numbers or a combination of both, and it will be at gwu.edu address. Main reason is because it's mirroring your single sign-on credentials, which is going to be a lot easier when we transfer over your account into an employee account. And that way you're able to log in perfectly fine with your SSO credentials. So once again, it is a very good idea to use your single sign-on information when creating your account. So the same password, the same email address as you are already using when logging in through your SSO credentials. That way, it's easier for you to remember, and it's easier for us to transition you into our employee portal after you're hired. With that being said, as always, with any account that you create and any information that you input, you want to make sure that you're keeping that information secure and do not share it with anyone, primarily because your single sign-on is your access key to virtually everything that you have at GW. So definitely make sure that you're keeping that information secure. When you're creating your account, it's going to ask you a plethora of questions. It's going to ask you to input security ed questions and answers. It's going to ask you to put your home address, your phone number, information that is going to be local and needed. Additionally, it's going to ask you to input your previous work experience. Oftentimes, you're probably going to sit there and think, well, I have this already on my resume. That's fine, but your resume does change. You don't want to keep updating your work experience in the portal, so just make sure that it's in both places as you apply to your positions. For federal work study positions, you do have two options. So you have on-campus and you also have off-campus federal work study positions. So once again, GW partners with employers in the surrounding area to give students the opportunity to work outside of GW and still get a really fulfilling experience. As mentioned in previous webinars, we do partner, we have partnered with Teach for America, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Kid Power, the National Association for Law Placement, and more off-campus locations. Currently, I believe our updated off-campus list for the 2026-2027 academic year is already live. So you'll be able to go ahead and view the available partnerships that we have. And so, if you are thinking about off campus, there are those options. On campus, you do have the opportunity to choose from a variety of departments. So, including GW Athletics, university libraries, the Division of Student Affairs, Smith Center events, and most of the academic departments, as well as many other locations. This is different, and I do want to emphasize this is different to certain third parties, such as GW Dining or the bookstore. Those are not relative to student employee positions. Not to say that a student cannot be employed in those positions, but they're just not processed through our office. They are done through third parties. So if you want more information on that, definitely reach out to the respective parties that handle them. But student employment does not oversee those locations. This is specifically for those that have federal work study. If you do not hold federal work study status, you can also review positions under the non-FWS category, which all students can apply to regardless of financial aid status. So I'll go ahead and take the opportunity if you have not had the chance to visit the federal work study live webinars, I'll just briefly go over it. Federal work study or FWS is part of your financial aid package that is distributed by the Office of Financial Student Assistance. So if you are under financial aid and you are given a federal work study offer, fantastic, you'll be able to go ahead and start applying to federal work study positions. If you are a student that does not qualify for financial aid, such as, for example, an international student, then that does limit you to only applying for non-FWS positions. So with that being said, finding a job, if you do hold federal work study, I'm excited to say that in the 2026-2027 academic year, federal work study positions will be posted and live for you to review starting July 13th. So it is this coming Monday. With that being said, I do once again highly recommend creating your account from now. So you're able to navigate the job portal as well as familiarize yourself prior to starting your job hunt. So once you have created your actual job portal, if you are currently logged in, you'll see that there aren't many positions, especially federal work study positions that are available. And that's because during the summer session, we do not employ federal work study or students within the federal work study program. And it's also not operable. So keep in mind that if you do not see any right now or you haven't seen anything in the past month, that is okay. Do not freak out. It's because they are going to be posted live this coming Monday. So if once again, if you have federal work study or you are in the process of obtaining federal work study, definitely start creating your portal from now so you'll be able to review the positions that will go live With that being said, it's not like a tsunami of positions that are all going to come out once. It's just July 13th is the start date for when we're able to approve postings in the portal. So if you see positions being posted July 13th, you might also see them being posted on July 14th and the 15th and the 16th and so forth. So we roughly post every day slash every other day, depending on how many positions or postings we receive from departments, especially as the August term or mid-July comes, because that's when hiring managers return to the university after their summer affairs and they're able to start creating the job postings and start recruiting students for the new academic year. So I would say, and I'd highly recommend once again, this is the perfect time for you to go ahead and create your portal so you'll be able to navigate it and have a better understanding of how the portal functions and how you can apply to positions. So with that being said, let's say that you are able to find a position or a posting that you really want to apply to. So the goal at this point is now to understand how it visually looks, right? So as an example, here is different examples of job postings that we've had in the past. You'll see here that both of these positions, the first two, say student research assistant, and then there's the numeric two next to both of them. And then you'll see in the third one, it's a tier three. The first two positions might look like they're the exact same thing. They're both non-FWS, the location's both in Foggy Bottom, but what you want to focus on is the department column. You'll see that one is for the international affairs staff and one is for the environmental occupation at health. So GW's job titles are standardized. So you are roughly going to be doing the same tier of work, not the same tasks. I do want to emphasize that, but the same level of work expectations. That's how it's differentiated through the portal. So both of these positions are research assistant positions. Both of them have similar workloads, but they are for completely different departments, and you probably will be doing different, well, you most likely, if not, will be doing different things. So the titles, yes, are important if you are wanting to differentiate between research positions and events positions or communications positions. But what you primarily want to focus on is the department you're going to be working for, and then the position specific summary, which you'll be able to access once you click on View Details. So it would look something like this. Once you've actually clicked on the view details, it's going to be able to tell you the position title, the level of support, the position type, the number of openings. So it corresponds to how many people they are hiring. So if there's one opening, they are hiring for one student. If there are five openings, they are hiring for five students. And there's also the wage per hour. As you can see, this screenshot is old. That is the minimum wage back then, $16. I am happy to say that we've gone up to $18.40 since July 1st of this year. So departments are able to pay you more than that. However, no department on campus will pay you less than the minimum wage. So it's forced to be at a minimum wage of $18.40 per hour that you work. So then you focus on the division in school, the department name, and then a department bio. The department bio will give you more of an understanding of the department you're working for, and the position specific summary is what you definitely want to focus on because that is what's going to tell you what you're doing in that position. So, for example, for this research assistant position, they are wanting to recruit, enroll, and conduct interviews with student participants. They want to process biological samples, abstract info from electronic medical records, monitor data collection, implement data collection. So these are the type of tasks they're expecting you to do within this research position. So that is what you primarily want to focus on when you are looking for a job. Once you go ahead and review the position specific summary, you also want to scroll down to the application material needed. So oftentimes that is a resume. Oftentimes it is a resume and a cover letter. A lot of times it is a resume and or a cover letter as well as your class schedule. And then if you are applying for a federal work study position, as mentioned in the previous webinar, you have to upload the Federal Work Study student statement letter. And that is a very important letter, or else your application will be voided and will not be processed or reviewed when you are applying to a federal work study position. More information can be found in the previous webinar, or you can email us or ask a question towards the end of this presentation regarding how to find that document. But it will also ask you for other types of application material. So it's very different depending on the department that is hiring. You just want to make sure that you have most of your application material ready and set prior to applying. Oftentimes, especially for our first year students, because you are still trying to process your federal work study and you're still trying to figure out your class schedule, I've seen first year students just upload a blank document stating that they are still working on their class schedule and will provide it as soon as needed or as soon as requested. When they are applying to jobs prior to arriving on campus or prior to having their class schedules finalized. So you can apply, and then therefore, later on, if you reach the interview stage and they ask you about your class schedule, you'll be able to furthermore elaborate. You cannot do this with the Federal Work Study student statement letter. I do want to emphasize that. You can do this with your class schedule, however. So with that being said, if you have any confusion on how to log in, how to create your account, how to navigate the job portal itself, I highly recommend our student user guide. So on the left-hand side where you were able to create your account prior, in that same column, you'll go ahead and click on student user guide once you've created your account. Once you click on your student user guide, it is a plethora of pages with a nice table of contents that walks you through step by step the onboarding process as well as the application process for when you are trying to look for a job. So this includes your application process overview, how to search for student positions, how to apply to a student position, how to view your current applications, how to view your completed applications. A nice thing about it for student employees is you're able to view your status. So if you do not receive an email from a hiring manager in regards to the status of your application, you'll be able to log into the portal and see if you were selected or not. You can also withdraw your application, how to review your current documents that are saved, how to sign your offer letter, walkthrough of the background check, and as well as the onboarding process and the differentiation between domestic and international students. So it's a very extensive user guide that has a lot of good information in terms of what you might want to know walking into applying for an on-campus or off-campus position. So at this point, if you do have any questions for how to use or navigate the portal specifically, you are more than welcome to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll go over them towards the end of the presentation. But I do want to go ahead and take some time to discuss developing your resume and the differentiation between a professional resume versus what you might be walking into if you have just graduated high school, for example. Um, so one key element, of course, is your resume, as mentioned, and this will not be the same as the resume that you've submitted during your applications process. The purpose of this resume is specifically to market your skills and the experience that you have gained to professional employers. So whether this is speaking about the extracurricular activities you've had or the summer jobs you've done while in high school, or even the clubs you've done, the extracurricular activities and so forth, anything that you may seem as or you may see as a transferable skill when applying to positions. So some of you might already have a running list of the things you've done during high school, for example. But at this point, it's a good idea to create a professional resume that aligns more with the career that you're trying to pursue, especially while being at university. So, an example that I can provide here is if you have a resume that you are currently walking into, like if you are first or second year, and it's not very relevant towards the positions that you're applying for, you can always reverse engineer it. And so that way, if you are looking at a job posting that you're specifically interested in, grab keywords from the job postings, grab like certain sentences, goals that they're wanting this person to achieve while being in this position, and align it with the transferable skills that you may currently already have in your resume. Now, before I do go into a little bit more depth, I do want to emphasize that this is a brief overview of how to build your resume and your cover letter. I'll go ahead and shout out our career coaches once again within the Center for Career Services. They are a fantastic resource that if you have currently access to Handshake, you'll be able to go ahead and book an appointment with them, whether that's in person or virtual, to have your application material reviewed, to go ahead and review best interview strategies and so forth. So it's definitely a resource that I highly recommend using. If you want any information on how to book one of those appointments, feel free to ask that question and I can answer it later on. So there are many sections that can be incorporated into a resume, but the four main sections are education, experience, activities, and skills. So under each section, you want to list the information in descending order, so most recent to the oldest experience that you currently have gained. Experience does not need to simply be paid experience, which I do want like emphasized before. It could include leadership positions, volunteer positions, or other types of engagement that you have gained throughout your time, whether in high school or otherwise. So, one way to help distinguish between the experience sections and the activity section of the resume is to consider whether you were in a leadership position of an organization versus simply being a member of the organization. So, for example, if you were in Model UN versus being the president of Model UN, one showcases a leadership standpoint position, while the other showcases a more collaborative aspect to your extracurricular activities. Or, for example, if you were the captain of your baseball team, in which you can describe leadership skills under the section or under the specific experience section, or if you were a member of the baseball team, then you would put that under the list of activities that you have done. So, as the extracurricular rather than an experience in itself. And then the skills section in itself is where you'll be able to list the technical skills and foreign language skills if you do have those. And then you'll also be able to use the bullet points to describe your experiences and skills, as opposed to writing paragraphs, which I'll go ahead and explain further. So this may look a little updated, especially if you are engaging with our career coaches now. But this is what a traditional resume might look like for a person who is applying to a student position. So it starts with your education, and then it goes into your experience, as well as your activities, and then your skills within itself. And so it provides a brief snapshot of all that you are able to bring forth to the position. So, with that being said, building your resume comes in phases. So, developing the bullet points themselves can often be the most challenging part when you're creating your resume. And so, when creating them, there are a couple of guidelines that can help in aiding that process. So, first, you always definitely want to start your bullet with a strong action verb. So, you want to use a verb that describes what you did. So, for example, saying instead of saying you worked with children, consider you mentored or taught children. So, mentoring or taught are stronger verbs that sound that you were a lot more invested and devoted into the learning experience of these kids. So, if you were, for example, babysitting, which is a very transferable skill if worded correctly. Babysitting children, you can put that in your resume, but it's not describing the full length of the tasks that you have completed. So you could talk about overseeing the kids from a specific time. You could introduce the array, the age ranges that you were babysitting, the types of tasks that you were completing when you were seeing that or seeing them. So the point is to elaborate a lot more on the action verbs that you are presenting when you're building your phrases themselves. And then second, you will want to add details to your bullet. So details can answer questions like who, what, where, and how. And they can also be numbers specifically. And then lastly, you want to end your bullet with any results, outcomes, or impact your actions. So thinking about what happened because of your actions, right? If you didn't catch it the first time, it's all right because we can go ahead and look at a couple of upcoming examples. So here is a first example. So processed orders in a busy, high volume environment in order to maintain daily sales goals. Um, it definitely is a bullet that you can introduce, but probably the hiring manager wants to know a bit more of what you were doing, who you were collaborating with, for example. So, collaborated with the president is already a much stronger start to the sentence because it's engaging with high officials, high university officials, for example, to plan monthly volunteer events at local food banks that encourage club members to engage in community service. So it's essentially following the STAR method, where you're essentially saying who you worked with, the level of work that you did, the types of numbers that you were generating, as well as the frequency of how much you were doing it, as well as the outcome. So, because you volunteered at these events, it encouraged club members to engage in community service. So that is the result, which is the part of the R in STAR. Oop, sorry. Perfect. So that is essentially going over the resume. So let's briefly go over your cover letter, which is another important piece to applying to jobs, especially on-campus jobs. So your resume showcases facts, your education, your background, your experience, and your skills, what you have done already, the transferable skills you have. So it's essentially a factual document listing what you have done. But the cover letter is where it gives you a chance to not only make an argument, but essentially present yourself in a non-robotic way. Oftentimes, especially with hiring managers, they are receiving dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes that essentially just give the hiring manager a brief snapshot into your past work experience. But your cover letter is where it genuinely humanizes you. So, oftentimes, where you will see that a cover letter is preferred but not required, please treat it as it's required. I always, even if it doesn't ask for it, I highly recommend people submitting their cover letters primarily because it gives you the chance to present yourself and introduce yourself in a more human way. So it gives you also the opportunity to emphasize specific experiences from your resume. So, for example, if within your resume there are certain bullet points that you really want the hiring manager to see in terms of transferable, but you think that your resume is kind of drowning them out, then go ahead and input that into your cover letter. Weave it into your cover letter in terms of showcasing what you bring to the table. So that is definitely advice as you navigate the job portal and see if there are options that ask you to that it's preferred for a cover letter to be submitted, please upload it. Now, the formatting is similar to a resume in the sense that it's asking for a one-page letter. The margins also being between zero point 0.5 and 1 inch, and the font size between 10 and 12. Uh, you do want to write your body paragraphs using single space and then a double space between each paragraph so the reader knows when a paragraph is ending and when one is beginning. Um, a cover letter is always written in business format as well. So you can input your address or essentially your overall address. I will say this, you can do that for on-campus positions. Most people know that if you're around the area or if you are a student, most likely you are in the area. However, especially for your resume and your cover letters, as you stem away from the GW application sphere and you kind of go into the real world, definitely revisit this as, maybe you don't want to put your full street address in there. Maybe your phone number, you want to X out a couple of digits just to make sure there's privacy, especially nowadays with people selling data, your application data. But you shouldn't have to worry about that with GW's application tracking system. This is just a differentiation that I'm advising people as they move forward with their careers, to definitely revisit the formatting. But in the case that you cannot find someone directly when you are trying to address the cover letter, so you don't want to put like dear hiring manager or who to whom it may concern or something like that. Try to find the specific departmental name or the specific hiring manager's name, which conveniently is within the job postings. So if you go ahead and look at the job postings, you'll be able to see the person's name as well as their email or contact information regarding the position. So you don't want it to be generic or specifically to whom it may concern. You definitely want it to be more personalized. And then, of course, your cover letters themselves, they start with an introduction. So a state of interest, your expressed reasons for applying, and then you want to work into your transition into the body paragraph specifically, which is connecting two or three prior experiences to the job duties and qualifications. So, as mentioned prior, remember how I said in your resume, if there are specific key points you want to weave into your cover letter to emphasize the transferable skills, this is a good opportunity within your body paragraph to pull a couple of those experiences to kind of mirror the job duties and qualifications that your hiring manager is looking for. So, you definitely want, as an example, let's say in your introduction, right? You can say, I am eager to be applying to the biology office assistant position at the George Washington University. I believe I have the necessary strengths and skills to be a valued asset to the office, and then my past work experience. And then that's when you can go into your body paragraph, which once again should highlight two to three examples of your past experiences and or skills that parallel what is being asked in the job requirements. So oftentimes, if you're kind of stuck on how to create your resume or how to build your cover letter, I always recommend reverse engineering. So go ahead and look at the job posting and then craft your resume and your cover letter to those job postings. So it can be a little tedious, but I can emphasize and tell you that we've seen a lot more success rate with students that take the time to cultivate their cover letters and differentiate them versus using a standardized cover letter and firing it off to as many applications as possible. And then once again, specifically with your body paragraph, let's say that the skills don't specifically match what the job requirements are doing. It doesn't have to be an exact match. All you want to do is to show the skills that you already have and essentially how you can use those skills and market yourself into being useful in that position. And then you want to go ahead and go into the conclusion itself. So you want to restate your interest as to why you are applying for the specific position. You want to provide the days and times you are available. So if you are not able to input your class schedule, if it's specifically for the interview process that you're looking for, then you can go ahead and input your availability if once again you have not uploaded your class schedule. Uh, and then it's very important to make aware to your hiring managers of any extracurricular activities you may involved in, that you're involved in that may clash with the job itself. And then, of course, thank the person you are writing to for their time and consideration as you interact with them. Oftentimes, when students reach this stage that they've submitted their cover letter and they've submitted their resume, we back then we used to advise students to send a thank you letter or an email, and that has definitely taken a toll on the amount of applications that hiring managers receive. So we've shifted more away from that mindset. And so if you are at the application stage, I know most likely you have been told, either growing up or entering the job market, that it's always important to send a thank you email. This is true. However, the timing of it is what's important. So, if you are applying to a position and you submitted your application and you immediately send a thank you letter or an email, please note that, especially at GW, and GW is a small like sample size compared to the actual real world out there. Hiring managers are receiving dozens, if not hundreds, of applications, whether it's a day, whether it's in a week, and so forth. So I want to emphasize that it is perfectly okay and normal if you do not hear back from a hiring manager regarding your thank you email, or if you do not hear back from them at all. And that's primarily because it's just not feasible for a hiring manager to respond to every single email or to every single inquiry that comes their way regarding the job process. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, I can send a thank you email, but when should I? Which is a great question. And so that brings us into the interview stages. So there is differentiations between a virtual interview stage and an in-person interview stage, and those differences definitely come with their own challenges. But specifically regarding now that we've covered your resume and your cover letter, as well as how to navigate the job portal and how to submit your application, let's go ahead and cover some best practices for interview stages. So, if you are doing a virtual interview, which is more common nowadays than an in-person interview, I recommend the following. So, regardless of it being in person or virtual, you want to make sure that you're researching the organization. So, if you're able to visit their website or to see what the public wants to know, oftentimes, especially in departments, they have mission statements. So, referencing those mission statements will be a very good tool as you navigate learning more about the jobs that you're looking for, the companies you're wanting to work for. And then we all know that it's definitely a virtual interview, and maybe the bottom half isn't as important as what is on camera, but still dress professionally because of course, it's about respect and being appropriate for the position that you're applying for. But you would be very surprised by how that mentally feels or how that mentally affects somebody when they're dressed up professionally, head to toe, and ready for the position even if it's a virtual interview, primarily because it just helps them get into the headspace of making sure they're able to do their best job. And so, with that being said, you want to make sure that you're practicing. And this is when you're able to send a thank you message. So let's say you have applied to positions and you landed an interview. Fantastic. Once you've gone through that interview, that is when you can go ahead and create that thank you message. That's the perfect time to send that thank you message. Thank you for your time today and meeting me and having the chance to do an interview with you in the department. I greatly appreciated learning more about the goals and missions of the department, and I look forward to hearing back potentially in regards to this position and so forth. So that is an example of what you can input when you are past the interview stage and you want to send a thank you to the hiring managers. They've seen you face to face, whether that's in person or virtual. They know your name, they know what you're capable of doing. And so that thank you message is essentially, just an extra boost as to not sending anything at all. But once again, please do this after the interview stages. You would be surprised by how thankful hiring managers are of students that wait post the interview stage to be sending those thank you messages. And then for in-person interviewing, I'll just briefly go over it because I do see that we have a couple of questions and I want to make sure we have time for it. In-person interviewing, the best tips is to make sure that you're introducing yourself by an introductory question. You can do this as well for your virtual, but with your in-person, you're going to be receiving that tell me about yourself question. Because oftentimes virtually, hiring managers tend to have a little bit more time in reviewing your resume and reviewing your cover letter, especially down to the last minute to understanding your experiences. But in person, especially if they're conducting multiple interviews, they might need a bit of a reminder because they're not having as much time to review application material. So if you are expect or if you do receive that question about tell me about yourself, which I understand some people might dread because it's a very large question, definitely make sure that when you are practicing, you're taking into consideration, that introductory phase. So treat it like your cover letter in a sense that you are going ahead and reintroducing yourself to the hiring managers. And then make sure you're practicing your questions out or your answers out loud. So the standard tell me about yourselves, strength-based questions, especially the you've had a time with a difficult coworker and asking to do this, how do you go about it? So that's a behavioral question and so forth. So there's quite a few standard questions, especially ones that GW use, and there's a list of examples of them on our website if you want to go ahead and review them. And then, of course, by all means, you definitely want to make sure you are confirming the location, looking it up, develop a plan to get there, and as well as have a point of contact that you're able to easily access once you are ready to approach the in-person interview. And definitely make sure to leave early so you arrive early. For some people, I always say to be early is to be on time, to be on time is to be late, and to be late is good luck. So definitely make sure that you are giving yourself ample time, especially if it's for an interview, to arrive at least 5 to 10 minutes early. Um, and that it will show your punctuality and emphasize your punctuality. So we're nearing towards the end, and like I said, I want to make sure we have time to answer the questions. But I do want to emphasize once again, the Career Services Center is here to help you. You should have access to Handshake at this point, which will give you the opportunity and the chance to book a career coaching appointment with our career coaches. And once again, they're able to review your resume, your cover letter, as well as your application material and any questions you may have about best interview strategies, as well as how to show up professionally for these interviews. If you do not have Handshake, I'll go ahead and share our information for you to email. And if you just email, I believe it's GW Career Center at gw.edu. Just email us and then we'll be able to connect you with a coach if you do not have current access to Handshake. So we'll go ahead and start with the Q&A, but before then, I want to say this is our contact information specifically for student employment. So if you have any questions regarding how to navigate the job portal or how to access your applications or access your applicant portal, definitely feel free to email us. It is gwse@gwu.edu. Our phone number is 202-994-8046, although we are able to respond faster over email. Our website is careerservices.gwu.edu/student employment. So if you go ahead and go to that website, you'll be able to see our upcoming events. I have another webinar called Point A to Point Z, How to Be Onboarded as a Student Employee. That's coming up, and that goes over the application materials that is needed to apply. It goes over the onboarding checklist that's assigned to you, background checks, offer letters, next stages, your I-9, which is most important, the types of immigration documentation you may need to process your I-9, and next steps on how to get hired. So it goes through the entire life cycle of how to get from point A, which is your application, to point Z, being hired. So highly recommend signing up for that one. And once again, just go to our website to find more information. And then our location is on the fifth floor in the University Student Center, which can be done by appointment through our Calendly, which is also available on our website.